Larry Ellison literally died and came back to life while building the database system that IBM had publicly declared impossible to create. It was 1979. Ellison, a 35-year-old programmer, lay dying of pneumonia in a San Francisco hospital bed. His business partner, Bob Miner, was simultaneously fighting his own life-threatening heart condition. Their tiny company had exactly $2,000 in the bank and 3 months of runway left. Yet somehow, from their respective deathbeds, these two men were about to prove the world's most powerful technology company catastrophically wrong. But how do you build a revolutionary product when you're literally fighting for your life? Let me take you back to where this death-defying story really begins. In 1977, Ellison was just another Silicon Valley programmer bouncing between contract jobs. He dropped out of the University of Chicago twice, had been fired from multiple programming positions, and was approaching 40 with nothing to show for it except a reputation for being brilliant but impossible to work with. His colleagues described him as arrogant, abrasive, and obsessed with proving everyone wrong. That summer, Ellison stumbled across a research paper that would change everything. IBM had published a detailed study about something called relational databases, written by a computer scientist named Edgar Codd. The paper described a revolutionary way to store and retrieve information that can make databases infinitely more powerful and flexible than anything that existed. But here's a crucial detail that everyone else missed. IBM had concluded their research was commercially unviable. They literally published a follow-up statement saying relational databases were academically interesting but practically impossible to implement at scale. The world's largest technology company with unlimited resources and the smartest engineers on the planet had officially given up on the idea. Everyone else in Silicon Valley read IBM's conclusion and moved on to other projects. After all, if IBM couldn't make it work, who could? But Ellison had a different reaction. He saw IBM's public rejection as the opportunity of a lifetime. If he could prove them wrong, he wouldn't just build a successful product, he'd humiliate the most powerful technology company and humiliate himself as the genius who succeeded where IBM had failed. Ellison convinced his friend Bob Miner to join him, along with another programmer named Ed Oates. In 1977, they founded software development laboratories with $2,000 in startup capital. Their mission was simple, but seemingly impossible: build the relational database system that IBM couldn't create. For the next 2 years, they worked 18-hour days in a cramped office, surviving on ramen noodles and pure determination. Ellison became obsessed with every detail of the project, rewriting code dozens of times until it met his perfectionist standards. He'd sleep at the office, shower at the local gym, and spend every waking moment thinking about how to solve IBM's impossible puzzle. The technical challenges were staggering. Relational databases required the computer to perform millions of complex calculations simultaneously while maintaining perfect data integrity. A single error could corrupt entire systems. The processing power required was beyond what most computers could handle. IBM's conclusion that it was impossible seemed more reasonable with each passing month. But Ellison had advantages that IBM didn't. He was smaller, faster, and completely desperate. While IBM's engineers worked on dozens of different projects, Ellison focused on this single obsession with laser-like intensity. While IBM followed corporate protocols and committee decisions, Ellison could pivot instantly when he discovered better solutions. By early 1979, they'd built a working prototype that could handle basic relational database functions. It was crude, unstable, and crashed frequently, but it worked. For brief moments, they could demonstrate the impossible: a computer system that could instantly search, sort, and connect information in ways that had never been possible before. Then disaster struck in the form of 2 simultaneous medical crises that nearly destroyed everything they'd built. Larry Ellison contracted severe pneumonia that put him in the hospital fighting for his life. His fever spiked to dangerous levels, and doctors warned he might not survive. At the exact same time, Bob Miner's chronic heart condition worsened dramatically, requiring emergency medical intervention. Both founders were suddenly bedridden and unable to work. Their company was burning through its last $2,000 while both leaders lay dying in separate hospitals. Ed Oates was left alone to keep the project alive, but he couldn't handle the technical complexity by himself. Potential customers were calling for demonstrations they couldn't provide. Competitors were circling like vultures, ready to poach their clients and employees. This is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. From his hospital bed, with IV tubes in his arms and oxygen flowing through his nose, Larry Ellison continued debugging code. He'd convinced the nurses to bring him a computer terminal, claiming it was essential for his recovery. Between fever-induced delirium and medication cycles, he was rewriting critical database functions and directing the project's development. Bob Miner was doing the same thing from his cardiac care unit across town. Despite doctors' orders to rest completely, he was reviewing code architecture and solving complex programming problems while hooked up to heart monitors. The two dying men were communicating through a primitive computer network, sending code snippets and technical solutions back and forth between hospitals. The nurses thought they were witnessing the final ravings of two delusional patients. The doctors were furious that these men wouldn't focus on saving their own lives, but Bob and Ellison knew they were closer to breakthrough than anyone realized. They could feel they were on the verge of proving IBM wrong, and they weren't going to let death stop them. 3 weeks into their respective hospitalizations, something extraordinary happened. Working purely through willpower and determination, they solved the final technical puzzle that had been blocking their progress. The relational database suddenly worked not just in small demonstrations, but at massive scale that IBM had declared impossible. When they were finally released from the hospital, Ellison and Miner had created something that would reshape the entire technology industry. They renamed their company Oracle after their flagship database product that could answer any question about any data stored within it. The first major client of Oracle was the CIA, which needed a database system capable of handling classified information with absolute security and instant retrieval. When Oracle's system performed flawlessly during government testing, word spread quickly through the technology community. The two men who'd nearly died building an impossible product had created something that even the CIA considered revolutionary. Within 5 years, Oracle was generating $55 million in annual revenue. Within 10 years, they'd reached $1 billion in sales and become the second largest software company in the world behind only Microsoft. By the time IBM finally admitted their mistake and tried to build their own relational database, Oracle had already captured most of the market. The vindication was complete when IBM eventually became one of Oracle's largest customers, paying millions of dollars for the exact technology they once declared impossible. Larry Ellison had not only proven the world's most powerful technology company wrong, he'd forced them to pay him for the privilege of using his superior solution. Today, Oracle is worth over $400 billion and controls nearly 40% of the global database market. Larry Ellison's personal net worth exceeds $150 billion, making him one of the richest people on Earth. The company he built from a hospital deathbed now powers the data systems for most of the world's largest corporations, banks, and government agencies. But the most remarkable part of this story isn't the money or the market dominance, it's the proof that impossible problems sometimes require impossible dedication to solve. When IBM's army of engineers concluded that relational databases couldn't work, they were applying conventional wisdom and traditional approaches. Ellison succeeded because he was willing to risk everything, including his own life, to prove conventional wisdom wrong. He saw rejection not as a barrier, but as validation that he was working on something truly revolutionary. Most importantly, he understood that the biggest opportunities often come disguised as impossible problems that everyone else has already given up trying to solve. The next time someone tells you something is impossible, remember Larry Ellison coding from a hospital deathbed while proving IBM wrong. Sometimes the most desperate circumstances create the perfect conditions for breakthrough innovations that change the world forever.